another powerful panel. How to build a successful innovation ecosystem, best practices from Asia Pacific. How do you define innovation ecosystem from Asia Pacific perspective? Let's listen to the panel. On behalf of GCPIT, let me welcome all the speakers in this panel. Dr. Rashi Gupta, fondly known as Battery Valley of India, is the pioneer of manufacturing of advanced lithium batteries in India, along with the world's smartest lithium battery. She is the founder and managing director of Vision Mechatronics Private Limited, leading it towards a name to reckon for in the field of robotics, renewable energy, and energy storage. She is going to be our moderator for today. Next, we have with us Mr. John Lim. He is a partner at Meet Ventures, is an experienced professional in the startup and innovation sector. He helps corporations and growth stage startups to work together for win-win outcomes. Throughout his career, John has reviewed thousands of pitch decks and worked with hundreds of startups. Next, we have with us Mr. Srinivas Mahankali. He has over 10 years of experience as MD, CXO, COE, lead level in IT and emerging technologies, and as program director for India's first university certified PG certified program on blockchain with MIT University. He works as a lead consultant for blockchain and emerging technologies at the Government of India and NASSCOM promoted company NISG for Smart Government. He has authored several books on technology and blockchain. We also have with us Mr. Syed Mushir Ahmed. He is the founder and managing director of FinStep Asia, which is building Asia's next generation of businesses and providing advisory on fintech and digital ecosystems in Asia. FinStep Asia is running a series of initiatives to enable fintech to scale and expand across Asia. Let us now try to understand the best practices from Asia Pacific region. Over to you, Dr. Rashi Gupta.
Thank you so much, Aparna ji. It's a pleasure to be here on this panel with my esteemed speakers. So when we talk of innovation and we talk of an ecosystem which helps to build innovation in the companies, we talk of a lot of technology, but we talk of really some things which are coming to the forefront. But today, we're going to hear about the best practices from the best people who are going to implement, who have been implementing this for so long now, and we will see the results of that as well. So let's quickly begin with John and understand how would he define the innovation ecosystem from the Asia Pacific perspective.
Apologies for that. Yeah, and thanks for the question. So how would I define innovation ecosystem from Asia Pacific perspective? I think definitely if you are talking about innovation ecosystem, we are talking about different stakeholders coming together and helping one another. In a very general and loose term, I would describe it in one word, and the word is relationships. So to give an example, at Meet Ventures, we have a network of regional partners, such as in India, Atel Incubation Center, BIMTech, whom we call our friends and have signed MOU to formalize the relationships. Apart from that, like around the region in Brunei, we have like Startup Brunei. Malaysia, we are partners with Magic. In Philippines, we are partners with Philippine Software Industry Association, etc., etc. So when it comes to innovation ecosystem, I think it's when we help each other and when different parties from who bring together different perspectives, bring together different opportunities and share them with one another.
Thank you. Let's hear the opinion from Syed Mushir ji as well.
Thank you, Dr. Rashi, and thank you to GCPIT for having me again. It's a wonderful initiative that they've been running. For me, sitting here in Hong Kong and having, I'm a Bangalore boy, born and brought up in Bangalore before working for 9 years and then coming to Hong Kong. Relationship is definitely a key element, which John has touched upon. But there are three main elements that we need to look at when we're looking at innovation ecosystems, right? There are multiple, but the first one is with regards to innovators. You need very strong innovators and the support system around that. So it could be from universities, it could just be from the ecosystem and environment that is there, where it promotes, supports, invests into innovators. That's number one. Number two is the adopters, which is again important. You may come up with some very fascinating, very interesting technology, but if you don't have people who want to adopt it, a classic case is the Google Glass, which when it came out was a big backlash in California about privacy, and we're talking about 6-7 years ago, right? And it still hasn't come back in. So you could have smart tech, and if you don't have adoption, then you can't do much about it. So adopters are very important. And number 3 is this ecosystem enablers, which is part of that relationship that John was also talking about, where from the likes of GCPIT or FinStep Asia or Meet Ventures and a bunch of others to universities who provide a very critical link to the government enterprises and the investment players. So those form a part of the ecosystem. And I feel these are 3 main elements of building a successful innovation ecosystem and one of the key parts of an ecosystem.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. So how do you guys think that we can tap the untapped potential of the Asian tech sector? See, we all know it's no longer a secret. A lot of brains are coming from Asia Pacific region. So how can we actually tap this untapped potential? Could you just give something to our audience and something to the young budding entrepreneurs?
Okay, so the question here is how do we tap on the potential? Sorry, didn't really catch the question very well because of the connection. Do you mind repeating the question here?
Dr. Rathi, would you mind repeating the question? I think John.
Sorry, I lost you guys in between. It was a network issue here again.
Yeah.
John, I hope all the audience would have got some insights on how to tap potential with the Asia Pacific region. How about you, Mushir ji? Any updates? Anything you would want to add on that?
Right. So, John, the question more or less is about what are the key points to be given to entrepreneurs and others when it comes to Asia's innovation ecosystem. I think so. I'll speak first, and then John can follow up. Again, a few points which are important here is Asia is not a homogeneous ecosystem. There's quite a few people, and they're looking at it from overseas and say from the West or even in Asia, assume that this has been a very homogeneous ecosystem. So let's approach it as one. Like we know, it's very different. It's 18 different jurisdictions and maybe more countries that you got to deal with. So you can't approach it as homogeneous. You got to go one country at a time almost. Maybe a few like South Asia has similarities. Southeast Asia has similarities. Greater China has some similarities. Middle East has some similarities. So, but first is don't assume that it's homogeneous. So try to build more tailored propositions when you're looking at it. Secondly is the fact that you could scale quite significantly in Asia, right? So sometimes people, when they're trying to innovate, do too much too soon. So they want to cover a lot of things and do a lot of innovation elements at the same time in multiple countries or even multiple products. What I would say is because you have the depth in market, both from an SME company perspective as well as the retail market in terms of the populations, start off with something that's one focus area and then build on from there as you have your strengths. And lastly is there is a tremendous strength in Asia when it comes to cross-border, right? But it's very, very complicated because of regulations, because of a multitude of things. But most companies do want to go cross-border. So how can you facilitate that and participate in that is important. So as an example, NASSCOM had done a research about, Economic Times had done a research a couple of years ago where 96% of all Indian startup founders said that they want to go global, of which 30% started off their business wanting to go global from day one, right? So there is a global mindset that exists in the region, in particular from India going overseas and vice versa, but you should be strongly aware about cross-border connotations, both to take advantage of it, as well as to be wary about the things you need when you're moving into a new country. So, thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Michelle. So maybe let me just add on, totally agree with you in terms of the need to work across different regions and the potential that it brings. And at the same time, while doing that, also to take note about the different local cultural differences and how that can affect the business models when you go from one city to another city in Asia. I think personally for me, being from a small country like Singapore, with a population of only 6 million, we can get from one end of the country to another end of the country in like 30 minutes. So definitely, I think from a perspective like ours, we'll definitely keep regionalization and a regional market as the first thing whenever we start a company or a startup, because the local market is simply too small for us. But I think in larger markets, such as for example, like in India, China, Indonesia, then I think that might be, it will be good probably to really like start from a local perspective. Another thing which I think, apart from the points mentioned previously, would also be to take a look at what some of the innovators from other parts of the world are doing. And we do see that happening quite a bit in the Asia region and Southeast Asia as well. If you look at some of the giants in terms of the tech, right, like Grab, etc., they took an idea from the Western countries, like from Silicon Valley, Uber, for example. They brought it over to the Asian context, and then they innovated by changing certain features, by doing customer understanding what the customers are looking for on the ground. And from there on, I guess what they did was really to cater it and to change it into a local version or localized context or localized platform for the local market. And I think when it comes to innovation, there are different kinds of innovation. Definitely, there's a disruptive innovators when it comes to tech, where you come up with a new patent and for a certain technology or proprietary intellectual property, and you try to commercialize it. So that could be quite disruptive. For example, I'm not sure how many of you have tried like Impossible Burger. So Beyond Meats, when that first came out, that was quite disruptive, right? Because it was not seen in the market before. But when you're talking about innovation and we're talking about tech, there are different ways to innovate. So apart from disruptive innovation, we can also look at how, if let's say right now you're a smaller startup without that much R&D dollars to invest in heavy R&D, you can actually also start with more incremental or marginal ways of innovation to see what is out there in the market, which might not be in global markets, that might not be available right now in your local market or in the regional market, and how you can contextualize it and turn it into something that might fit into what the people around you need.
Awesome. Great to hear such good insights on this. Something that I'd like you to also highlight is on how are the local partnerships and regional mindsets very important for a scalable growth? Like we've heard a little bit on the international perspective. Now, I would want you to talk about more, both of you together, to talk about more on how we can have local perspectives and international perspectives blending together to create a very good ecosystem for innovation. And at times when we talk of innovation not necessarily should be something really great, big tech, but it can be something really small, which can help both the locals and the international market together to combine in a cross-border culture as well. So could you both highlight something on that as well for our audience?
I'm trying to think of an example.
Okay, that's nice. So in the meanwhile, I can hear something from Mushir on that.
Sure. Look, I think this is a very interesting aspect, and as I mentioned with the research that shows a lot of founders are looking to go international, like an India perspective. But local partnerships are very important, right? Why? Because your local market is what a lot of people are judging you by. When we used our accelerator to bring in B2B fintechs into Southeast Asia and Hong Kong, we would look at their local clientele. How well have you done in your local base? So building partnerships locally is a given, because you are showcasing your quality in the local landscape, and also are bringing along other people who could be in a synergetic with you, right? That's how you can achieve a lot of scale. So it could be like take a fintech which is doing, say, payments only, could then tie up with a fintech that probably is doing lending. And just an example there, right? Or or in case of tech, it could be a battery power company working with a EV company, right? So partnering up. So those are important elements. As entrepreneurs, you need to be able to leverage of whatever synergies you can do, right? Going alone is a very tough journey. Uh, you may be a single founder, you may be multiple founders, but when you're going alone in the market, especially when you're young, it is not as simple and not as easy. So if you are partnering with synergetic companies who are also at similar stage, you could grow into becoming bigger partners as you go and leverage of each other's strengths and networks. So that's one. And once you expand on that, you can then, as John was mentioning his previous element, then you can try finding similar companies globally who may be there, right? So let's assume you find a partner or you find a company who's doing something similar to you in Europe. You could then maybe partner to bring something to other countries where both of you are not present, right? So that helps. And there may be the question of also technology. It's a very important element. Partnering to fulfill your technology needs can be quite beneficial. You could be white labeling. So you may have a business model, you may have everything working well, but you could then maybe use a white label technology solution from an international partner and vice versa, right? Lastly is partnering with, if you're a startup, partnering with large institutions themselves who don't necessarily have the same agility or the demand and target audience. So you could use them for, let's assume a bank, right? They may not be targeting university students or people who are subprime for whatever reasons. So you could partner with the bank to reach those subprimes, and you are the one taking the risk, or your business model is focused on that. So it's a win-win situation, as it were, for these institutions.
Yeah. Thanks, Moshe. I think agree with you, and I think the questions were very well organized. Thanks, Dr. Rashid. Initially, prior to this, I think the question was on technology, and right now it's about partnerships. I think these are two key aspects to succeed when you are talking about commercializing innovation. Just now, as Moshe was explaining and giving his thoughts, I was also at the back of my mind trying to think about some examples. I thought of two from a local context. So over here in Singapore, in the past, the main media company in Singapore is called Singapore Press Holdings. So what they did at the time was they started an accelerator program, which gave startups, B2C startups, technology companies, direct access to thousands, millions of eyeballs around the region. So I think from this perspective, you could see how partnerships are important. And in this case, it's how a smaller company is partnering with a large media company, listed company in Singapore, and how they tap on their resources, not just in terms of funding, but to tap on their network, their media network, to get their product out to market as quickly as possible. So that's one very powerful example of how you can leverage on partnerships to go to market. Another example of how you can leverage on partnerships to get your technology out quickly would be an example of IBM Watson. I was previously running a program many years ago for IBM Watson. So if for those who are not familiar with it, IBM Watson is the AI arm of IBM. So when they first started out, I think about 5 to 7 years ago, I was running an innovation program for them, for IBM Watson. So what they did was they were looking for companies that are trying to use AI to create meaningful impact in society. But at that time, AI was very new, and it was very difficult for startups to very quickly build their own AI engines. So what IBM did was that they licensed out their technologies to the startups to help them to kickstart their tech development process. So something that would have taken them maybe 4 or 5 years to develop, right now takes about 4 to 5 weeks with the support of IBM. And because of that, they could also go to market more quickly. So these are some examples. But at the same time, I think the question here is, how do you get access to these opportunities? These opportunities, of course, is not for every single company that goes to them. There's a very stringent selection process. But that being said, I think apart from corporates, right, it's always good. One way that maybe you can get access to some of these opportunities would be to look at some of the associations tech associations, etc. And some of these associations, they do actively introduce their members, smaller members, to their larger members. And that could be one way in which you could also get access to decision makers from these larger agencies that can actually help you and to maybe start a conversation with their company about potential partnership.
Great. We have Srinivas with us here. Welcome, sir.
Yeah.
We have been discussing a lot about these companies on innovation and ecosystem and startups. Now, something that I want you to give a perspective is about what is the role of public sector, governments to play in this startup innovation ecosystem, which can actually help the new upcoming entrepreneurs as well as the existing companies to do real great innovation, which is required for not just the development of the industry per se, but even at the community at a large and nation at a large, and even some highlights on the cross-border innovations and how governments cross-border can actually help companies and countries to innovate. Over to you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, and good evening to the entire panel members, and thank you very much, GCPIT, for giving me this opportunity. It's a very good question that you have asked, ma'am. So actually, in the past few years, we have seen that the government, especially in India, has become very, very aggressive and active in promoting the startups and encouraging them and investing in them and creating special funds. Recently, even Prime Minister has announced a special fund, and also one of the leading personalities like Chris Gopalakrishnan is supposed to head this particular, take care of this fund to ensure that it is well utilized to promote the startup ecosystem. So nowadays, you find that most of these startups are coming around, the emerging technologies, space. Emerging technology is something new, and number of technologies working together, whether it is AI, IoT, blockchain, 3D printing, number of them. Not much of experience has been there in countries like India in the past. So we need to look at other countries like where they have developed ecosystems in this, whether it is China, Singapore, Japan, elsewhere. Okay, we need to see the best practices, what they're having. And India has to encourage all the startups to, develop products and solutions in this, emerging technologies, and should give them the environment. For example, they can provide them sandboxes, and also handhold them with a lot of mentoring, etc., which they have been doing. And there are fantastic initiatives that have been, going on in the form of Atal Innovation Mission. They are doing a lot of activities, technology business incubators in a lot of universities. There's a lot of collaboration is happening between government, private sector, startup ecosystem, as well as universities. In IISc, Indian Institute of Science, it is one of the topmost in the world in terms of academic research. They have a SID department wherein they have actively encourage startups to come forward in a lot of extremely cutting edge technology areas, where all their professors collaborate with them and try to evolve solutions and give them opportunities to explore, connect them to investors, connect them to mentors, train them a lot, give them access to market. Number of things they are doing. So there is all these things which a few years back it was quite dry. Startups were left on their own. There were, of course, there have been number of initiatives like 1,000 startups by NASSCOM and I Start by Bamasha, and a number of initiatives have been there, but they have been very few and far between and sporadic. And startups are initially given a start, but later on they were left on their own. But now, government is very much determined to see that, all these startups, even if they are starting at very, very early age, a lot of these, youngsters, they don't have much to lose, everything to gain, and they have very, very active minds and very proactive. But they need to be mentored because they don't have sufficient skills, especially in management, etc. So there have been number of initiatives that have been come up both by government and even startup evangelists like Ms. Shraddha Sharma, Shraddha Sharma is, globally known face. She has come out with startup education programs, which are of very, very cheap, but all-rounded, but put the startups in touch with, leading mentors, experienced people, investors, and they give the startups very, very good platform and handle them. They also recently started a helpline for startups. So a lot of things Government of India has recognized that the future is all about innovation and startups. And these are the people who can create more and more employment opportunities for people, not only take care of themselves, but also provide employment opportunities. Because the large companies, they are only shedding manpower. They are always looking at ways and means of leveraging technology, automating well and good, but they're always in the drive, productivity drive. Most of them are listed companies. They're answerable to shareholders. So a lot of times you find them, addressing their shareholder concerns by dropping manpower, but increasing productivity, etc. But startups are there. More and more startups, you have more and more employment gets generated and value gets created. In the recent past, 2-3 years, we have more than 11 or 12 unicorns that have come up in India, and it is more and so. Indian Prime Minister has announced a number of initiatives, not only the funds, but also self-reliance. Okay, self-reliance means depend on Indian products and services. Nowadays, wherever we go, I've been working in the government. Wherever we go, public sector and government departments, they are saying that we want to encourage Indian homegrown products and services. We will give preference to that. And rather than looking at imported products and services and solutions and applications. Okay, so that idea is getting more and more deeply penetrated into every nook and corner of the country. So that will give a lot of hope for the startups in India, and this is what is important. Government has to focus on this Atmanirbhar scheme. That means self-reliance. China has done it once upon a time, about 15 to 20 years back, and see where they are right now. And now America is coming back to that. Just now we have seen American president also talking about self-reliance. More and more countries are understanding that the domestic demand has to be catered well. Can actually provide a good good starting point for all the startups in their country, and can enable them to become global scale players if they are able to encourage them. Earlier, we always, the government departments always used to encourage organizations which are having certain minimum size and scale, because of which most of the startups were not even qualifying. But nowadays, if you are a startup, if you are tying up with a startup, if you're talking about a homegrown technology, that is becoming a big positive point for you to try for orders in the government. So this spirit needs to be encouraged more and more and more. And government also has to, help in creating sandboxes, for all the regulatory sandboxes, etc., with active involvement of government. And another important thing is all of these various initiatives should be connected well with each other, so that there is not much of diffusion of energies and resources of the government and all the mentors, and everybody is working on defined areas and supporting, focusing all their energies like a magnifying glass on a paper. Just how it converges, the sunlight. Like that, we need to focus on the chosen areas, chosen applications, and then help the startups in those areas to grow, develop more and more and grow bigger and bigger. So there's a lot government can help in encouraging, in imbibing the best practices that are happening not only within the state, within different states, like for example, Tamil, Telangana, Karnataka. These are all, Gujarat, Maharashtra, and Rajasthan. They've been doing extremely well in the startup ecosystem. The best practices can be carried forward to all other states. And not only that, we can also look at other countries like China, some of the European countries, especially Singapore, or even US for that matter. We can take the best practices and then make that a benchmark against them, and then and another important thing is leverage upon them. There is no point in reinventing a lot of things and again starting from the scratch in all these emerging technologies. Build from wherever you can by doing a lot of collaboration and cooperation, and learning from the West, learning from the best, and and then provide them the sufficient ability to market and the market for their products, and then handhold them to grow. That's how innovation can flourish. Otherwise, without demand and without proper mentoring, they will get frustrated, and again they will start looking out for opportunities to work like a normal employee. So that's what I feel. I think we have been learning a lot from other speakers about the best practices, and there's a lot that we can learn and imbibe. We are still in the early stages of the startup journey, so we are still a startup in that sense. Long way to go. Yeah.
Great, sir. Thank you. Lovely insights from the government perspective in India as well. Something that we are moving towards the end of the session, so I would love to hear just one last comment from each of our esteemed speakers out here on a combination of what would you like to give as a mentoring statement to all the audiences who are out here. So that is one last comment. First, let's hear from John. John, you're on mute.
All right, sorry. You were saying one mentoring, what? Mentoring a comment, is it? One last thing.
One last statement, a mentoring statement, and an encouraging statement for all the young entrepreneurs and all the audiences listening into this ecosystem, how innovation.
Okay. Thanks a lot. I think this session is really, it has been a very short but powerful, impactful session. And thank you to the other panelists as well. There's a lot of information, but if I were to share about one thing, I would think the key thing would be about the mindset. And I think the mindset that we should all have when it comes to innovation, there are many different kinds of mindset. Like, I think one of the most important ones is to have a collaborative mindset, to find ways to work with different parties, different players together. Because innovation is hardly done by a single person or by a single company. Most impactful innovation is a result of partnerships, it's a result of working together with different stakeholders, through be it government agencies, be it with corporates, startups, partnerships. So having a collaborative mindset, I think that would be one of the key ingredients for any startup or anyone who's thinking of starting a tech company in the future to bear in mind.
That was a great insight. I mean, I loved the way how you have combined the mindset and the partnerships in innovation. Over to you, Mushirji.
Thank you, Dr. Rashi. I wouldn't say I'm going to give mentoring advice, because as an entrepreneur, I'm always learning myself. So this is more from my own experience, and given what's been happening with COVID-19, three main very quick points. One is perseverance is very, very important, irrespective of what you're doing and where you are. As an early stage entrepreneur, you need to persevere, and if you're not able to persevere, it can be very difficult. Number two is, if anything, COVID's taught us is reiterating the very fact that you should be able to pivot and change. So always be ready for change is what I say. I call myself a fintech ballerina. Amount of times I've had to pivot my business in the last year and a half, but that's very important when you have very different times. And number three is there's a Spanish term which says the fight is non-negotiable, which basically means when you are in the entrepreneurial world, you have to give it 120%. Even 100% is not enough. So this will be my, not advice, but this is the lessons I have learned from my personal experience as an entrepreneur, and hopefully that's something that can help others as well. Thank you.
Awesome. Can we hear some sentences from Srinivasji on this?
Yeah. Thank you. I think both of them have made very simple but very effective and fantastic points. My advice would be to add a little bit on that is that be ready to learn from experiences of others, and also be very good at reading a lot and imbibing a lot. World's number one entrepreneur today, whom everybody looks up to, is Elon Musk. Everybody invariably everybody has got their regard for him because he reads a lot, and he cross-pollinates ideas from one field to another, and he keeps learning continuously, and he never stops. So a lot of people say, be practical, don't be bookish and all. It's not like that. You should keep learning a lot. And one of the best books that I've read recently is From Pony to Unicorn by Hari Tian. He's the head of HR of Big Basket, and one of the greatest mentors, angel investors, and also strategic advisor to Fundamental Group. And he has seen everything possible in entrepreneurship, and how companies is worked in very, very senior positions in a lot of organizations which have gone from strength to strength, or sometimes they have also fallen down because of a recession, etc. He has seen all the bad things and the good things, and he has written this amazing book. And he has given a simple formula for success. Where but I don't want to talk too much about it because it is a 9-point formula which talks about 2M, 2F, 2S, 2C, and 1H. Okay, I mean that's very simple. If you're very, very intuitive, also you should learn from such books because they're all totally filled with real life stories and experiences, and how great people have persisted against odds, how they kept up their motivation throughout, how they pivoted at the right times to the right thing, and never been stubbornly stuck upon some things which were not working. Just like how Mr. Syed has told, pivoting is very important at the right time. And I also recently written a book called Decoding Innovation, modeling the 21st century enterprise, wherein I have taken learnings from a lot of leading organizations in the world and some of the best principles, like whatever principles called determinants of scale, or 10x, or 6D principle. Number of them I have tried to relate them with proper examples, and from learnings of others I try to create a simple manual for innovators and startups, and wherein I also given a lot of ideas about where they can approach for incubation centers or educational programs, etc. So best thing is to keep learning from others, learning from other experiences, because you cannot do everything in your lifetime. You can depend on other things also. Yeah, thank you.
Great. This was such a power-packed session that we had today, and we have learned about the mindset, innovation through partnerships, perseverance, and change is constant, and keep learning. So that's the insights we have. Over to you, Aparna ji. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rashi Gupta, for moderating the panel so well, and to all the speakers who joined us today.
Thank you for having us.
We'll be taking one more break, and we'll be back to learn about the best practices from Europe.